Yeah, just hearing Daniel talk about what India can do next is certainly inspiring. So, thank you, Daniel. So it's an interesting world that we are in terms of the pace at which the changes are really happening today, and the innovations that are actually coming forward in the technology sector as such. We'll talk a little bit about what it takes applications to be able to operate at this scale. So every organization goes through a level of transformation at times when they really feel the need or when they realize there is a need to transform or reinvent themselves. Right? One such story that I can proudly share with you is our own story at NetApp. We've gone through a transformation journey over the last 2 to 3 years. And that transformation is not only global, but it also shows up in our India center here in terms of what we do. Right? We've always driven through innovation. The fact that we have a landscape that we compete in with large number of resources or deeper pockets or what have you, our ability to be able to transform has always been focusing on the customer problems, being able to find the right solutions to the customer problems in a way that you obsess about it, and really be able to find those solutions and look at the ability to be able to transform to the needs of the market. So the markets are, certainly changing. We have gone through an era where the changes in the IT infrastructure have been phenomenal. You look at the entire stack. You look at whether it is from a capacity perspective, whether it is from a form factor perspective, or from a performance perspective, right? The innovations that have come out have enabled use cases that has never been addressed before. I've always used this quote. It really set things straight for me, and I thought I would share this here with you guys. The way the current trends are going, and the way one needs to operate is that if everything seems under control, you're just not going fast enough. It's almost the same way as saying that, if you really like the first version of the product and if everything works well out in the market, that means you went to the market way too late, right? So you'll see that picture, although, for some of you purists that may be sitting in the room, the code is really from Mario Andretti. But obviously, he wasn't a bike rider. The fact that the picture is there is, it works for me just because it works for me. Right? Obviously, NetApp is a sponsor at the MotoGP, and I just took the liberty of using the picture. So the idea is really about you have to be in the forefront. You have to really be pushing yourself to the envelopes to look at what opportunities there are. And how do you really look at being able to play in the world of, where the applications are today in terms of the, scale? I know the speakers this morning talked a lot about the act of blitzscaling, and I'll talk a little bit about, why now and why is this come up, right? We've seen and heard a lot about the growth in data. The data growth has been going for a number of years now and will continue to grow. And I don't think there is any surprise about it anymore. It's only about the ability to be able to handle and process and analyze and make decisions based on that data. Right? The fact that much of data is there today, the fact that we have the innovations in the IT infrastructure stack to be able to process and be able to handle that case, that level of data, allows us to address some of the new use cases that requires an incredible amount of scale. You look at some of these use cases that are there in terms of whether it is rich media, in terms of, today, you get a mobile device with a terabyte of capacity in it. The form factor probably being less than you ever saw before. Connected transports in terms of every flight that goes more than 8 hours, that flies more than 8 hours, transmits a half a terabyte of data. And the ability to be able to collect that data in real time, to be able to make decisions, to be able to relay back those decisions is certainly possible because of the ability to scale and address that scale. Similarly, think about in terms of life sciences. Right? The ability to be able to collect data over time. In fact, in life-saving situations, one of the research that was done recently was about being able to address pancreatic cancer. Most of the time, when people realize they have pancreatic cancer, it's already too late. You can't do anything about it. The research also said if you were to actually predict it 2 weeks before, just in 2 weeks, it could save a significant number of lives. I think that's the power in terms of our ability to be able to address some of these scales and to be able to use these use cases to make progress, right? So using these use cases, and the market having the need to be able to address these use cases has also resulted in applications and your infrastructure needing to scale as much to be able to support these use cases. So what do companies do about these kind of transformations and these kind of to be able to address these kind of use cases, right? You can't assume the way you did everything previously works in the future or be able to address that scale. To tell a little bit of our own story in terms of what NetApp has gone through in its transformation, right? Having been a traditional storage player, we now call ourselves a hybrid cloud data management company. We actually, what was there in our storage devices in terms of features, functionalities, and ability to be able to address some use cases, we've been able to successfully take that and make it available on a platform like a hyperscaler, like whether it is AWS, whether it is Azure, whether it is Google Cloud, what have you, and make that available to a much larger user base. And once you actually expand that large user base, you have to address the scale. And the ability to be able to use the same features gives you the market opportunity and opens up that window, as well as being able to address some of the newer use cases just because you have the scale now. So what is required? What is required? I also remember Daniel talked about in terms of adaptability. Believe me, I did not talk with him before, and I hadn't met him at all before this one. So we believe adaptability is a big factor in being able to understand what is happening in the market and finding the need to be able to change in what you do, to be able to actually cannibalize your own revenue stream to change to whatever the newer business models might be. Right? So I thought about in terms of what does it take to be able to make that transformation happen, to be able to scale to the levels that are required to address some of these new use cases, right? So I came up with 4 things, and talking a little bit about it. It's about being able to identify an opportunity in the market. So you think about what your expertise is, you think about what your business is, you look at in terms of what opportunities you can actually get into to be able to leverage new business models, to be able to leverage new market opportunities. A good story to think about is Intuit, what Intuit has done. The fact that they opened their platform to to public in terms of being able to integrate things with it, right? Nobody would have ever thought a proprietary software to be open in that fashion before. The fact that American Express is integrated with, American Express offers an app on your mobile to be able to, transfer everything into QuickBooks, for whatever your credit card transactions happen, right? Imagine that. That's the power of being able to, making those decisions and taking those risks to move in that direction to use some of the new, business models. Think about in terms of adjacencies. While you look at opportunities could be a large map. The idea of being able to look at adjacencies is to use your expertise and competency in the right areas, right? You look at the adjacencies and make sure that you can succeed. Where a good example is also Adobe's transformation, if you will, right? They were shipping software. Then they were able to, offer people to download that same software from internet, and now it's actually offered as a service, which has been one of the fastest transformation if you saw any company, making, in their business models, right, within 3 years, which was surprise to everyone for that matter, right? Talking a little bit about that kind of scale and looking at adjacencies, right? I'm sure, especially those of you who have teenagers probably can relate to this word called Netflixing. I didn't know about it until, a couple of weeks ago, right? It's become a verb apparently. So, if I talk to my kids, they don't need TV at all. They don't even watch TV anymore. It's all about their devices or their laptops or whatever, and Netflix and Amazon Primes or what have you, right? The ability to be able to find such adjacencies in terms of being able to create a market, is certainly something to look for when you look at being able to scale. The idea of being able to look at, you look at the opportunities, you look at the adjacencies that you can excel in. However, you also want to keep an eye on the future. What is actually changing in the market? You look at those unknowns, things that are coming forward, right? People talking about IoT, people talking about, what 5G can actually bring, what it can enable, right? Those kind of things that, that can happen, right? There are certainly, materials always that are available, right? Just to give a plug for Zinnov and, NetApp, which did a joint study on B2B, on the B2B ecosystem as such. It's a pretty comprehensive report. There's always material like that from the industry perspective to understand what the future is and where it is going. So you look at your opportunities, you look at the adjacencies, you look at the future in terms of if there is a way to get there, right? Keeping that in mind, and the last thing I would say there is, once you identify that, you really look at being able to place a couple of big bets. The idea here is that fundamentally, I believe in something like, something that I always refer to as doing a few things insanely well. I would rather do 2 things very well than 10 things in a mediocre fashion, right? And to that end, it's about the company which takes the risk in a couple of areas where the reward can also be good, and then in terms of what transpires. So the ability to be able to place big bets and take those bets and execute on it is as important as the first 3 things I talked about. We can talk about a couple of things in terms of examples, if you will, including our own example in NetApp, where we decided to move away from being a pure data storage company to a hybrid cloud data management company. We placed our bet on the fact that the future would be a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud architecture. That would be the IT, architecture of the future. That's what we bet on. Very similarly, you can also see in terms of Tesla being able to go and sell, being dealerless, being able to sell cars online. Who could imagine that you can buy a premier car online all the time without having to really drive into a dealership and having the hassle of negotiating, with them and what have you, right? The idea of being able to bet on something like that is, certainly something that you can see returns on. So bringing that together, these are the 4 things I feel in terms of that you can look at to be able to transform, find those niches in terms of where you can excel and place those bets and be able to succeed in terms of operating at scale. It's not just about, one of the things I wanted to make sure that I communicated as well was that, just by building a product, just by building a business model, it's probably not good enough. You have to think about the ecosystem, what the ecosystem presents, and then how do you build that ecosystem. Think about the solution, what the customer wants. It's not about what you want. Again, it's about the customer obsession in terms of what they need. They want a full end-to-end solution. They don't want point stuff, right? So you need to think about building an ecosystem that presents an opportunity to solve a customer problem. So if you are brave enough to be able to decide to go through the transformation journey, I'm pretty sure you will be able to see that wave that you can ride on at the other end of that tunnel. Thank you.